Elon Musk just gave a telling Tesla update, and it came right after we saw this vehicle in Europe, which is validating FSD in Europe. The launch of FSD in China, while Europe is left with years-old autopilot, which is not very good, is an embarrassment to the European continent. But Elon Musk says we are waiting for regulatory approval. And before Tesla promised to launch FSD in Europe in Q1 of this quarter, and this quarter is not over yet. Personally, I wasn't expecting Tesla to launch FSD in Q1 of this year, in Europe specifically, but now that Elon just posted this, I think the chances certainly have gone up. FSD in Europe definitely is coming for sure 100%. And here's something that I think personally is very bullish that Elon Musk just posted. The long-term outcome for Tesla is very high, says Elon. He's not saying maybe it's high, maybe it could be high. He's saying no, the long-term outcome for Tesla is very high. That statement is backed with 100% confidence and certainty. And personally, I think the reason why the stock is up 3% is because of Elon's post about Europe. And this post from last night also definitely helps. And there's something really interesting happening with Tesla right now. Tesla is supposedly going to launch a free full self-driving service in California so people can try it out. What does that mean exactly? This is from the Washington Post, by the way. So it is going to be a robotaxi service. And based on what we know, Tesla actually submitted an application to the government of California for a permit to transport passengers in its vehicles late last year, so probably December. And this seems to be hardcore data, so definitely facts probably. At the moment, Tesla has a permission to test its driverless vehicles in the state with a human behind the wheel, but the additional permit, if granted, would allow people to summon the vehicles from Tesla free of charge. So this application basically means that Tesla would own and control a fleet of vehicles, and it's the same type of permit used by Waymo. And this is from Bloomberg. In its communications with California officials, Tesla discussed driver's license information and drug testing coordination, suggesting the company intends to use human drivers, at least initially in the beginning. And Tesla currently, it does not have, nor has applied for, a driverless testing or deployment permit in California. So at least as of this moment, there's no date or expectation for Tesla to have unsupervised robotaxis in California, but the expectation is set for Texas. But if it works out quickly in Texas, it will definitely work out in other places in the US as well. I also looked into what kind of permits Tesla will need in Texas, and did Tesla actually already get them or no? It says here that Tesla will need to have a rideshare license with the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. And this article from Bloomberg was just published, but it says here as of early February, the company had not had communication with the department according to a records request. And Tesla is also not currently listed as a rideshare licensee on the department's website. So Tesla still does have some paperwork to do, but I think Elon Musk is on pretty good terms with the governor of Texas. And I think if Elon really wants to pull a few strings, that shouldn't really be a big problem. The main issue here is making Tesla's robotaxis work really good without a human driver. The permits and the licensing, I just see that more as a formality. And also for me personally, just hearing that FSD is basically ready for Europe and that Tesla is just waiting for regulatory approval, certainly you would see why some of the bulls are celebrating this quite a bit. Just like these people who just received their VINs for their refreshed Model Ys that they just ordered. So first deliveries in the US of the refreshed Model Y are imminent. The world's #1 best-selling vehicle just got better, and you can now start taking deliveries of it in the US. And now supposedly this is huge news. Morgan Stanley analyst Adam Jonas said he was left speechless after he spent an hour this week being driven in a robotaxi in London in the UK. Adam rode in a development vehicle from Wayve that used 7 cameras, no radar, no LiDAR, no HD maps, and no labeling. It was all end-to-end AI-enabled foundation model. He said it drove with confidence and like an experienced London cab driver. Recent video from Wayve of a 75-minute uninterrupted autonomous drive in central London is displayed right here. Microsoft is an investor in this company, and supposedly perhaps Morgan Stanley is, but I tried to double check if Morgan Stanley actually invested in this company, because if they did, then obviously this would be a bit of a comment conflict of interest. So I spent some time digging into this, and I personally could not find any hardcore facts that would 100% verify that Morgan Stanley has invested in this company. I found some rumors, but nothing really substantive. So my personal guess is that Morgan Stanley is not an investor, or if they are, we will find out very soon, because I think they should really seriously definitely disclose that they are an investor if they are making statements like, "I was left speechless." The video certainly is impressive. However, I do not have access to that vehicle and I cannot test it myself, and I have to rely on someone who I'm not really sure that I would trust that much, Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley. In the meantime, I can hop into my Tesla and I can do a no intervention drive, 90 minutes. I'm sure I could replicate whatever I saw in there in a city in North America. Maybe not always on the first try, but after trying quite a bit, I think you can get that footage, and we don't know how many times they tried to record that footage. But this company only has dozens of cars and 450 employees in total. They're still in their R&D phase, and they do have partnerships with Microsoft, Nvidia, and SoftBank. And what they're doing is they're working with the UK grocery chains like these two to collect data from delivery vehicles, and they have expanded testing to California. So their driving data comes from thousands of hours of real-world testing, as well as a lot of simulations. They're using Nvidia chips and systems, and they have maybe tens of millions of miles of driving data, which pales in comparison to Tesla. They want to license to OEMs. Oh, it's unclear though exactly how much data they have, but this company has been founded in 2017. So there's a fear out there that FSD would become sort of similar to how it all went with OpenAI, where ChatGPT first came out and was clearly the best, and then all other companies came out with their large language models, and suddenly ChatGPT, while it was still really good, now actually after the release of Grok 3, it's no longer the best. Many people still use it and it's extremely popular, but Elon Musk beat OpenAI now. And if, let's say, FSD-like software becomes common with other companies as well, do you think that Elon Musk will still not be the best? He already proved it that he can do it with a large language model. I'm pretty sure the same will happen with FSD as well, especially keeping in mind that in this case, there are a few very unique advantages that Elon Musk has. First of all, he has been working on the problem pretty much longer than all other companies that specifically use the vision-only approach. And by far, Tesla has more data than anyone else on Earth. And unlike data used in large language models, this data, you cannot just go to a library and acquire from all the books that have been written, and you cannot just simply go on the internet and download this data, which you can do for a large language model. But video clips of vehicles driving with a specific set of cameras that can then be turned into a 360 bird eye view kind of thing, which then is used to control vehicles steering, acceleration, and braking, that just does not exist. You cannot just download it. You need to create that data yourself. So this is a very different problem from making a large language model. I personally believe that the most important thing here is data, and Tesla by far has more data than anyone else. So while what they're doing here is somewhat impressive, although this was a somewhat scary turn, however, keep in mind this is still sped up, so it's not real time. But yeah, overall what they achieved, certainly impressive. Will they completely obliterate Tesla? I definitely don't think so. I still personally believe that Tesla will go to $1,000 per share, and then after that, well above it. And so I believe that this is a huge buying opportunity for Tesla stock investors. So when Tesla stock hit an all-time high of $488, everyone that didn't buy when it was below $300 wished that they had bought. But now that their wish came true, they are scared to buy. On the other hand, reading a lot of the comments under my videos from before, I did see many people say that they want to buy, but they just don't have any more money to buy. I understand not everyone like me has high income, and also if you have watched all my videos for the last 14 months, you have heard me talk about my young teenage brothers who are getting older now, and they're asking me everything I know about money, and they want me to teach them. Because looking at how well I'm doing, they want to learn. And so because of that, I'm doing a 2-day event actually in Texas. If you'd like to come, you're welcome to come. There's a link down below to sign up. And now we have some more good news for Tesla from China. And remember this post from Ray? Basically, the consensus in China from FSD testers is that FSD is extremely human-like, unlike any other Chinese systems, and confident. Elon said that he heard it was the leading topic. And Tesla's Ashok said apparently 1.3 billion views were generated by Tesla's FSD in China. And Ark Invest Brett Fenton just posted this. Nearly 10% of US Tesla miles were autonomously driven last quarter. So you can see that we are reaching about 10 billion miles per day driven on FSD. Brett Fenton expands on this. 10% is both a lot, like a very big number, and actually quite small if you think about it. I think for a lot of folks, when they are behind the wheel, they are extraordinarily intolerant to deviations to how they personally would drive, and therefore they intervene. And I sometimes do the same thing, but occasionally I have drives where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to intervene unless I absolutely 100% have to, and during drives like that, there are no interventions. Often I have maybe one awkward moment, but no interventions. Brad, though, has a friend in LA who claims that he has to intervene multiple times in every short trip, which is bizarre since I am driving in the same town on the same hardware and snap off 30 and 40-minute trips without intervention all the time. And he points out something really fascinating, so pay attention here. From a product perspective, it is interesting that unsupervised will probably only become available some months after robotaxi, since robotaxi will be supported by an operator network and unsupervised presumably won't. So we might actually have robotaxis operating without any issues in, let's say, Austin and all over California and maybe all over Florida. And yet, if you live, let's say, in Chicago, you will still need to pay a lot of attention when you drive. And here's an FSD tester from Canada, and he drives a lot of miles downtown. He drives roughly 50,000 kilometers per year and almost no interventions. He drove from Ottawa to London, which is about a 6-hour drive. And yes, there's actually a city called London in Ontario, Canada. Years ago, I needed a photographer in London, the UK, and my assistant was looking for photographers, and she found someone that had a really good portfolio but was charging a lot less than anyone else that we found. So obviously we wanted to go with that person. And right before booking that person and paying for the services, we realized that this person actually is from Canada and is referring to London, Ontario, not London, the UK. So that was a close call. But he says during the 6-hour drive, the hardest part was not falling asleep. And James made a comment on Brett's post as well, and I largely disagree with his post. Absolutely 0% of US Tesla miles were autonomously driven last quarter. Can't be half pregnant, he says, but the reason why can't be half pregnant in this case is because cars cannot get pregnant, so that's why. Either the car is autonomous and Tesla accepts full liability for it, or it is a supervised level 2 driver assistance software that can crash at any moment. This is black and white. This is a problem when you do not have a Tesla yourself that has full self-driving. I have drives repeatedly where I sit in the car, I turn on FSD, and then I do nothing for the rest of the drive. Of course, I need to be there, I need to pay attention, but the car is driving itself. Can the car crash at any moment? Of course it can. Can my car crash at any moment while I am driving? Of course it can. It is true, however, that Tesla definitely does not accept liability currently, but James before also has made statements a while ago that if FSD suddenly becomes much better and obviously safer than human driving, even if there are no permits issued or anything like that, investors would see that and then they would buy a lot more Tesla stock, making the stock go up much higher, because at that point, regulatory approval would just be a matter of time. This pregnancy analogy is one of the worst analogies you could ever think of, because literally right now, Tesla is pregnant with FSD. And it takes a while for the FSD baby to actually be born, or maybe it's actually already born and it's actually out there in the world driving, just sometimes not very good, but usually it's pretty good. My point is, the baby is no longer the baby. It's like a little kid, maybe even becoming a teenager, and it's getting there. It's getting better. I disagree with this post at large as well. Car doing most of the driving is impressive, but it doesn't make it autonomous. It does actually make it autonomous. When I turn on FSD, I do nothing and the car just does everything. However, it doesn't make it fully autonomous because I still need to pay attention. I agree with that part, but he didn't say that. So if you use the word or the phrase fully autonomous, I would fully agree with what he's saying here. The threshold for it to reach autonomous is a high bar of safety. So if you use the phrase fully autonomous, I would agree with him, but he didn't use that word, so I fully disagree. And this post explains beautifully why James is so wrong here. This is like when you are legally required to be present in the vehicle to drive around with your kid who has their training permit. You're trying to tell me because you are in the car supervising them, the kid isn't driving the vehicle? What? And at this point, if it's the kid's first time driving, FSD is less likely to crash than the kid. And by the way, I lied, James, so I'm not criticizing him. I'm only criticizing the statement here. And Dylan Loomis is a pretty big Tesla bull. He does have a statement though about FSD. He says, hate to be that guy, but it needs to be said. Tesla has not yet solved FSD and there is no guarantee it will be solved by June. My Tesla stock investment thesis, by the way, does not rely on FSD being solved by June. Personally, I don't really care exactly when it will be solved because I know that the first company to actually scale it in a way that can be scaled at low cost is going to be done by Tesla, and that's the main thing that really matters. He continues, don't misunderstand me. I'm not predicting it won't be ready. I'm simply reminding a specific group of people that seem to be operating under the assumption it's already a done deal. If it was truly solved, we would have unsupervised. Actually, I disagree with that. Not necessarily, because you would still have to assume liability, and you may not want to do that for a few reasons. I think it's better to launch a robotaxi in an area that you know for sure you have a bit more safety built into the system overall, because, for example, let's say there's a lot more data collected in that area, so your liability risk is a lot lower. And then after doing this for a few months, you can launch and supervise eventually in maybe some areas the first few weeks, and then you expand to all other cities or a few cities at a time, like once every week or something like that. But of course, you would have FSD supervised and you would just see in front of your eyes. You can drive 20 hours in downtown traffic and have no interventions. Then it would be very clear, oh, this is something here. It's FSD basically unsupervised, but you still have to supervise. It's happening. So I don't really fully agree with Dylan on that point, but he continues. Yes, it's incredible 99% of the time, but cracking the code for the final 1% is excruciatingly difficult. And Elon Musk, of course, admitted that many times before. Does FSD pull out in front of people and then take its good old time for anyone else? This has happened to me. And Dylan is not a fan of this. Then he points out that we still don't have an answer for sun glare. The sun issues, personally, I'm not actually worried about that. There are multiple things you can do with cameras and lenses to avoid that issue in the long term. One of them, for example, is using a certain kind of lens. Think of it as sunglasses when there's sun outside. It's sort of similar. Not exactly like that, but it's similar. And suddenly, the bright sun doesn't bother your eyes anymore. Then there's snow, continues Dylan. But how often have you seen snow in Texas or California? So you can just ignore snow completely and just first launch in Florida, Texas, and all of these southern states. And then Dylan shared this video, and something similar to this happened to me. So he actually wanted to go straight. There's snow, and the car chose the wrong lane, so the car now has to turn left, and now there's a green arrow. The car is now going. In my case, when something like this happened to me, the car took the wrong lane, but then when the light turned green, it actually made the turn, which I was annoyed by that, but it wasn't a safety critical intervention. And in a robotaxi, I think eventually you would get to your destination, so it's not a safety critical disengagement. But it is certainly a bit annoying, yes. And here's a Tesla competitor. This is a 12-minute video. This car has Huawei ADAS LiDAR, 15 radars, as well as cameras, and yet it struggled with tasks pure vision FSD handled with ease. The Huawei system had 4 takeovers, went the wrong way, and even drove into a ditch. With LiDAR, it drove into a ditch. Wow. Tesla FSD without any local data from China is already beating the best Chinese systems with more extensive sensor suites. And the starting price of this vehicle is about 80,000 USD. Someone said the Huawei system feels like an FSD version 10 or 9, but with the LiDAR. Oh. And before I play this clip, just keep in mind, no one got hurt, everything was fine, but it's a bit of a scary moment that's coming up in a second here. This is not a Tesla, this is the other system that has LiDAR. Keep that in mind.
Still accelerating. Very frightening. We can clearly see from the dash cam footage that at this intersection, there is a big stop sign here. Huawei not only did not recognize this stop, but with this kind of unprotected execution, it simply doesn't have this kind of stop and observe if there's any traffic danger. From left, right, front, and back. It just aggressively went ahead.
Tesla system is definitely not perfect, but it is being very impressive right now. And it seems to be beating other Chinese systems. FSD owners in China are certainly thrilled. There's an update from Wayve. It is currently providing an average of nearly 28,600 paid robotaxi trips per day. Their entire robotaxi fleet is now driving nearly 190,000 fully autonomous miles per day. So if an unscalable self-driving solution can provide this many daily rides, imagine how many rides a scalable solution can provide. So Wayve is basically at a run rate of over 10 million driverless rides per year, which proves that demand for autonomy is very high. Here's a bit of good news. The lowest cost Tesla Model Y is now sold out in Australia. More good news. Tesla's dependability improves in 2025 JD Power rankings. Here's the full chart. Pause if you like. And then Farzad made a video saying that Elon Musk should go on the Jon Stewart's Daily Show, and Elon Musk replied to it saying, "I will do it if the show airs unedited." The Daily Show X account replied with, "We would be delighted." So the show seems to be happening, and it will also be live on X. Tesla's Model Y is definitely ramping in the US. We are seeing 150 refresh Model Ys at Fremont Factory just now. And a new survey by JD Power and Associates found that 94% of EV owners are likely to consider purchasing another EV for their next vehicle, obviously. Only 12% of EV owners said they were likely to consider buying an ICE vehicle for their next purchase. So once you go EV, you don't go back, and every year they get better. Charging improves, ranges improve, the cars overall are more reliable and have better features. So it's only going to go one way in the long term, and that is towards EVs. Oh, well, this is quite a story. An activist was caught with explosives at a Tesla dealership in Colorado. The good news is the suspect has been caught and faces multiple felony charges. Authorities also report the dealership was vandalized repeatedly with offensive messages before the explosives were discovered. Hopefully this doesn't happen again, because overall, certainly it's not great for Tesla. But luckily, the law enforcement did their jobs very successfully. I'm very proud of them. And now here's some interesting and good news. Roland, who reports a lot of delivery data from Europe especially, he published Tesla sales from some European countries, and according to him, this is about 60% of Tesla's volume. These are from countries with daily reports. Some of these countries I think have weekly data, but he's basically saying that it looks to him like the likelihood of beating last Q1 is actually high. So despite the media reporting a lot of supposedly bad news from Europe for January, maybe it's not really going to be that bad according to Roland. He does point out though that there is definitely a problem in Germany and France, but Europe is much bigger than just Germany or France. This post from him comes after Tesla just had the best week of the year in Europe, based on 60% of sales in Europe, because we don't have all the countries yet. Oh, also, turns out it was a woman that planted the explosives at the Tesla dealership in Colorado, so people are making some interesting posts. And literally it's ABC News that's saying it's a woman. Here's some more good news. Tesla has slightly increased the display range in the US on the long-range all-wheel drive Model S with the 19-inch wheels. It's an increase of 8 miles. In China, people are getting the refreshed Model Ys. Remember these 10 Cybertrucks that were donated to the police of Las Vegas? We now know who exactly donated them. And these Cybertrucks, they are saying it's a great tool for recruitment. So if there is ever an explosion again near a police vehicle as a Cybertruck, none of the police officers would be hurt. That's largely the motivation for donating these Cybertrucks to the police. And now we got some juicy and interesting Elon Musk and DOGE news. Do you ever wonder how politicians get so rich while their official salaries are so low, relatively speaking, to their net worth? Well, here's an explanation. A former ICE employee and Biden transition team member joined family endeavors in early 2021 and helped secure a sole source HHS contract for overflow housing from licensed care facilities. As a result, family endeavors' cash and portfolio of investments grew from just $8.3 million in 2020 to now $520.4 million in 2023. Since March 2024, HHS paid $18 million per month to keep this facility open despite sitting empty. With national license facility occupancy now below 20%, HHS was able to terminate this contract, saving taxpayers over $215 million per year. Wow, and supposedly the DOGE efforts are polling over 80%. The Republicans love it, but a lot of reasonable, moderate Democrats also love all the cutting. But not all Democrats are in love with this. Farzad, by the way, used to be a Democrat, and he says, "I'm growing increasingly confident that backlash from Democrats against DOGE will backfire immensely." And Elon Musk gave us an update that taxpayer savings receipts, including corrections when mistakes are made, which inevitably will be made, are posted on the DOGE website. When there are complaints, they should be directed towards specific items, but they just yell constitutional crisis and avoid mention of specific line line items. The DOGE department also is cutting a lot of credit card access to some government employees. There's a pilot program established across 14 civilian agencies to audit unused, unneeded P cards. 700,000 accounts with $30 billion of spending in 2024. After 8 days, 24,000 cards have already been deactivated. And by the end of the week, likely the number will be double. And a new Elon Musk interview just dropped with Joe Rogan. Is 3 hours long. So I'm gonna go watch this right now, and I will probably post another video with a compilation of these most interesting moments from the podcast. And Tesla closed almost 4% higher today. And if you would like to take advantage of that buying opportunity, but unfortunately do not have enough funds to do it regularly over and over and over again, make sure to click on the link down below, where you will learn everything you need to know about the event that I'm doing in Texas, during which I will share everything I know about money. I will not be holding anything back because I'm doing this event for my brother, so I really need to give it my all. Those of you who will choose to attend the event, I believe if you are not doing financially incredibly well, this will be the best financial decision of your life. And I personally believe that Tesla stock is going to $1,000 per share, and then after that, well above it. My name is Matt Postius. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video.